Hello and welcome to the final episode 8 of season 1 of School Spirits. I was actually wondering how they were going to possibly make a season 2 of this show, but there's still so much story to tell. Anyway, so much happened this episode, onto the recap. So Maddie's kind of reeling from the realization that her mother might have killed her. She instructs Sai to check her house for the money if her mother took it. Maddie says that it would be in her old hiding places where Sandra used to stash things like her alcohol. Sai finds something. It's the envelope that we saw Sandra stash in Maddie's drawer an episode or two ago. As Simon leaves the house, even though he told Maddie's mother that he was looking for a history book, she looks awfully guilty or possibly scared or suspicious of what he was really looking for. So it turns out that it's not money in the envelope, it's Maddie's pendant, her necklace that she had on when she went to look for her mother the day her mother came to the school. Sai says that there could be a possibly logical explanation for all of this, and he looks genuinely heartbroken by the prospect that it could be her mom. I think I mentioned this last week when he was trying so hard to clear Mr. South's name. I felt that if Sai was guilty, he wouldn't be working so hard to clear someone else's name. Obviously, he would want to get away with it. So the Spirit Kids are talking about their very weird and shared experience of Dawn crossing over, and Mr. Martin is looking very squirrely in his seat. Wally and Charlie ask if there was anything weird about the day that Janet passed, and Mr. Martin says no. Unlike with Dawn, when Janet passed, she simply was there one moment and she was gone the next. He low-key tries to downplay the difference, saying that these were just two different experiences, the one that Dawn had and the one that Janet had. He doesn't think that Dawn's passing is any different. Charlie gets a bit frustrated then, and he asks how it's possible that Mr. Martin has no knowledge after all these years, and he asks about looking back, something that Mr. Martin advises against. Charlie asks, well, what if looking back is actually the key to moving on? Mr. Martin snaps then, and he yells that it's too painful to be constantly thinking about it, to relive it all. Rhonda asks painfully how. Then he tells his story. Mr. Martin says that the day he died, he made a mistake. He turned his back for a split second and there was a fatal error. There was a fire and he managed to save the kids in his class, but not himself. He feels guilty for the fire even happening in the first place because that is traumatic. He tells the Spirit Kids that he failed his students and he doesn't want to fail them too. He says that he's actually been trying to help them, and Rhonda agrees, but Charlie's not quite buying it. Maddie explains to Wally that she told Dawn that she was sorry for how she was treated. Wally admits that the Spirit Kids weren't always so great to Dawn either, and Maddie theorizes that maybe Dawn finally just heard what she needed to hear. Maddie says that for the first time in this whole thing, she's scared of the truth, as in the prospect that her mother might have killed her. Wally tells her that if anyone taught him how to face his fears, it was her, and then he holds her and tells her that he's got her. Sai's teacher tells him that Maddie is slated to receive an award, and maybe Sai could accept the award on Maddie's behalf. He suggests that Maddie's mother Sandra accept the award, which would mean that Sandra would have to come to the school, and that's exactly what Sai and Maddie want so that they can get to the bottom of things. Xavier goes over to the station and tells his dad that Mr. South can't possibly have killed Maddie because he was with him the entire time. He says that he's told his dad this several times before. His dad walks away and says that he's busy. Xavier follows his dad into the office and says that Mr. South couldn't have been at that house either because he would have been physically incapable of jumping out of the window like that. His dad is like, bold move, Xavier, for admitting that you were there. And he tells Xavier to go home. On his way out, Xavier takes a photo of an address that his dad had written down on a notepad. Charlie is wondering why Rhonda suddenly isn't curious. Why isn't she asking more questions? Rhonda says that it won't really help her. Charlie is all of us because a few weeks ago, Rhonda was ready to cross over and she was working on it, and now she seems to have no interest, so what happened? Rhonda looks kind of spooked and she tells Charlie that he's out of his depth and he should just give it up. Yeah, she knows something. Sai and Sandra get to the school and he's going to help her put a few words together for the award, and they go into a classroom and Maddie is there. Simon tries to get answers out of Sandra and she blocks up and she's about to leave. She's not having any of this. Then Sai takes the necklace out of his pocket and he asks Sandra why she had it. Why did she lie to the police and tell them that she didn't see Maddie the day that she came to school? Maddie was wearing her necklace after all that day. So how did Sandra get it if she didn't see Maddie? Meanwhile, Charlie and Wally are doing a bit of digging in the school's archives, and they find out that Mr. Martin actually lied about being the only casualty in the fire. According to newspaper clippings, Janet also died in that fire. Oh snap. And we learn that both of them, both Janet and Mr. Martin, lied to everyone in the Spirit Club. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Maddie touches the necklace and she suddenly remembers. We get a flashback. Sai and Maddie are in class, and they see Sandra drunkenly park her car in the school parking lot. Maddie leaves the classroom then, goes down the hallway, still wearing the necklace. She bumps into her mom then, and Sandra says that she lied about this because she was ashamed of what she did. Anyway, back in the memory, Sandra claims that she's clean and she doesn't need rehab. She's really hyperactive. She's certainly not clean. She tells Maddie that she used her college fund to buy a cabin for them up north. This money was actually money that Maddie's father had left for her. The bell rings then, so they take their conversation down to where the boiler room is, and that's where the argument heats up, with Sandra basically telling Maddie that she's the adult, that she needs to get over it. Maddie is emotional, and she tells her mother that if she wants to take everything that her dad left her, then yeah, go ahead. Why not take the necklace too? Maybe she can pawn it. Maddie rips the necklace from her neck and throws it on the floor. Sandra takes it and she walks out, and Maddie is left there crying. So Sandra left Maddie alive. I'll be honest, they kind of dropped a big bomb on us at the end of last week's episode, but I was never really convinced that Maddie's mother could have killed her. And judging by all the comments, nobody was. Anyway, back in the present, Maddie says that her mother is telling the truth. That Sandra killed her spirit, but didn't kill her. Wally and Charlie go to the nuclear bomb shelter place and see that the place hasn't been touched in years, except for one place where it looks like the dust has been disturbed, a box has been moved. They find some files then of themselves in Mr. Martin's handwriting, as in he was taking notes from his talking sessions with them, making detailed reports on their trauma and such. Sandra gives a speech then. It's very boring. It doesn't resonate emotionally, I guess, because I'm quite cross and disappointed with Sandra right now. Even though up until this point, I've actually really felt for her character. Anyway, Mr. Martin stands next to Maddie as she watches her mom's speech, and she says that maybe she's ready to say goodbye and she might be ready to write her obituary now. Xavier, Nicole, and Claire go to the address written on Xavier's dad's notepad. While Xavier and Nicole go into the house, Claire decides to stay behind in the car. She then sees someone else go into the house and she runs out of the car towards the house. All three of them manage to get out, but the person gets away, but not before knocking Xavier over. Back at school, Charlie and Wally are getting warmer. They find a newspaper clipping reporting that Janet's parents wanted the school to be held accountable for the fire as they believed that it was caused by Mr. Martin. Remember, he told them that the fire was caused because he turned his back for a split second. Also, none of Mr. Martin's notes mention Janet. Xavier is conscious, but he's hit his head pretty bad. He's bleeding. Nicole, who took a video of the person who got away in the car, sends the video to Simon, telling him to watch it. By her expression, the person is someone familiar. Xavier then passes out. By the way, I was confused at first because the car that the person got away in looked identical to the truck that the kids arrived in. Rhonda finds Charlie and Wally in the bunker, and Charlie's like, "You knew that he was treating us like test subjects and you never told us?" Rhonda says that when Maddie joined Spirit Club, she got this feeling, and that's when she started following Mr. Martin. She then shows Wally and Charlie this big container with all of the objects that the kids had with them when they died. Rhonda's acceptance letter to Berkeley, Charlie's letter to Emilio, and Wally's football. He's been hoarding them. Just then, they hear the door closed. They're locked in. So Maddie's writing her obituary, and just then Simon comes in and she reads it to him. Poor Maddie, but this was so boring. Anyway, she tells Sai that he's the only person who's been there for her and she loves him too, more as a best friend, kind of soulmate. She doesn't say it, but it's clear to me, at least, that she's not saying she's in love with him. Anyway, Sai starts crying then, and he shows her the video that Nicole sent. And what follows is an excellent moment this episode. In the side mirror of the car is Maddie. Sai says that that's the person who's been breaking into houses across town. That's the person who attacked Xavier that night. Sai theorizes that seeing Maddie like this, her spirit self, he isn't sure that this is real. He doesn't think it is. He thinks that it might be a coping mechanism for him dealing with losing her, but he thinks now that Maddie is alive. She tries to convince him that she's real, but he walks out. I haven't been the biggest fan of Simon all throughout the series, but there are some moments that he's really, really good, and it reminds me of that moment right at the end of episode 1 when he finally sees Maddie. I feel like those moments are acted out so well by him. Then we get taken back into a memory of the moments after Sandra left Maddie in the boiler room. Maddie hears some shouts and she goes further downstairs and opens another door, and that's where she sees Mr. Martin seemingly in the middle of some kind of therapy or torture session with Janet, telling Janet that she has to tell him what she felt and what happened. Mr. Martin is momentarily distracted by Maddie at the door, and Janet uses this as a chance to escape. Then something happens. Mr. Martin shouts at Janet to stop, but Janet runs out of the door and the force of it knocks Maddie back. Now remember when Dawn warned the spirit kids about the dangers of hypnosis and how as a spirit kid, if you go under hypnosis, it's like having a vacancy sign above your head and spirits could just like go inside of you? This seems to be what happens to Maddie at this moment. This is a crazy scene. Anyway, back in the present day, Spirit Maddie hears voices. It's obviously Rhonda, Wally, and Charlie, and she tries to open the door. Rhonda on the side says to be careful, like you can't trust him. And just then, Mr. Martin appears at the top of the stairs. At the end of the episode, at the bus station, we see Maddie, well, a body that looks like Maddie's, but she has a different voice. And at first, she accidentally says that her name is Janet, and then she corrects it to Maddie. She's about to skip town with a bag full of money. And on her way out, she tears a missing persons poster of Maddie off the wall. Unfortunately, I'm short on time, so I'm going to have to stop the video here, but this was a fantastic finale. They really stuck the landing, and I'm looking forward to season 2. Anyway, if you have seen it, feel free to share your thoughts, and thank you for watching.